has been mixed reaction following the U.S. Supreme Court ruling to overturn the Roe versus Wade judgment ending 50 years of federal abortion rights. Now, the ruling means there will be limitations on abortions, and individual states will now need to decide whether to restrict or ban abortions. Let's get some reaction now from Seoul City Institute CEO Phinah Kodisang, who is on the line. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. One of the most powerful countries in the world curtailing the sexual and reproductive rights of women. What is your take?
It's a sad day in the reproductive justice world for women, especially women in Africa. As much as the decision is taken, in the U.S., we know that whatever happens in the U.S. trickles down and most definitely affects Africa. And in a way, Africa, most of the funding that it gets, to do reproductive work is from the U.S. So definitely we know that, we will be affected in one way or another.
In considering the influence of the U.S. in the global public health sphere and other socio-political issues, what gains do you think will be reversed here? I mean, you make mention of the importance of the funding aspect, but certain gains were, it's almost like we were going forward and now we're going backwards just by listening into this outcome.
Very sad indeed that we are going backward. We were progressing. It was progressive for women to be allowed their right to their bodily autonomy, their right to make decisions about their bodies and or their reproductive health. And now this decision is reversing that and, taking women back to where a few people make decisions about the bodies of women, because the right is now given into the hands of a few, and the majority being the women of the world, whose rights are taken away from them, left in the hands of the few. So that's anti-women, that's anti-progress, and definitely a very sad moment to witness in our lifetime in 2022.
You speak about taking the rights away from women, but there are also other dangers when assessing the impact on society, when abortions are made illegal and the laws have become so hostile.
True, and in Africa, in fact, we have 6 categories, of abortion, and if you allow me that to educate all of us on that, because we will see why it's important for Africa to be autonomous in decision making, and that's what we need to advocate for as advocates, to get to a point where Africa makes its own decisions and chooses women. So and I have them written down here because I won't remember all of them. But we have countries in Africa where abortion is legally allowed to save a life of a woman. So those are countries like your Cote d'Ivoire, Malawi, Nigeria, Somalia, South Sudan, and others. And in the 3rd category, abortion is allowed under the conditions of preserving life. So that's in Benin, Burkina Faso, Burundi, Central Africa. Then we have abortion that is allowed for the preservation of physical and mental health in countries like your Algeria, your Botswana, your Gambia. And the other category is where there are no legal exceptions, Angola, Congo, Egypt, Gabon, Mauritius, Madagascar. And we have categories where, abortion is allowed without restriction to reason, but with gestational limits, like your Mozambique. We belong in that category in South Africa. And these are indication of how limiting the provisions of abortion is on our continent. There's, limitations that come according to what the country chooses. So women are still not allowed their full rights. And we saw that, the Maputo Protocol was calling for women to actually be given the right or to exercise their rights fully. And that's what we need to push for. I think what this moment says for us is that we need to go back to the drawing board as women and look at the laws of our countries, but push hard to make sure that in our lifetime, women get to enjoy their freedoms fully with no restrictions. Because the restrictions that are placed, as I was counting the different countries and the restrictions that are there, mean women will never fully decide what needs to happen to their bodies. somebody is deciding for them what needs to happen to their bodies.
Yeah. I mean, you say that the law is regressive. Why would you then argue so strongly against this law, especially looking at the very different circumstances that often push women to opting to abort?
Because we make abortion a moral discussion. We discuss it as a moral issue and not as a reproductive justice issue. And that is why for me it's regressive if we are saying we can no longer afford women that right, that that privilege to decide, and whatever that you want to do. If you feel that you are not ready to have this child, you should be allowed not to have the child. We bring children into a world where we end up frustrating them. They are born into poverty. They are born into families where they are rejected. So we create more problems instead of solving the problems. And I think we should focus a bit on our country, South Africa, because while this decision was made in the US, South Africa itself, even with the law that is there that has no restrictions, is very restrictive in what it allows women to do in terms of reproductive health. We say to women they can go to clinics and get services to prevent pregnancies, but they end up not getting the service because the service is not friendly. Sometimes products are not available. They end up with unwanted pregnancies, and we still deny them the choice to say, now that I'm in this situation, I don't want to continue carrying this child to term. Why are we then deciding for women instead of allowing women that choice? I feel strongly that the choice should be made by women and not by the law of the country.
How enabling is the environment? Should a woman or a girl come to then seek an abortion because they may have perhaps been raped?
Exactly, especially in the instance where rape has occurred. For me, I feel that's the most injustice that happens to young women and women in general. When, one, you've been violated, two, you are denied that choice, because when you go to a service provider, a clinic, and you want abortion, which is legal in South Africa, you are turned away sometimes because of a nurse who chooses not to provide the service. Because we also have these, contradicting laws in our country where you have one right that by law is not supposed to supersede the other, but definitely does supersede the other. So nurses have a choice, to provide the service. I forget the name, conscientious something. I forget what you call it. But they can, on the basis of that, choose not, to offer that service at the time you come. And you know that with young women, the minute you are turned away, the first time you make that hard decision to go and look for that service, if you are turned away and not provided the service at that moment, you are likely not going to come back. The same way with contraceptives. If they come to the clinic having made a decision that they want to be on contraceptives, if they are not provided at that moment, most of them never return. So we need really to push our government. We want, women to be afforded the right, and we don't want to be affected in the decisions that are made in the U.S.
And most of the women that you make mention of who opt to never return because of the way that they've been treated or made to feel, often now resort to even more dangerous means, where you find yourself in an environment where now you go into an unsafe abortion. Talk to us exactly about what an unsafe abortion would mean.
We've seen many women lose their lives. I think 2 months ago, if not 3 months ago, we embarked on a campaign with the Deputy Minister of Health, where we were going around Rustenburg area removing posters that advertise illegal abortion, which we consider unsafe because it's done in an unsterile place. It's done by people sometimes who are not even professionally trained to do these services. So we lose young women. Their reproductive health is affected forever, because if they succeed to remove the pregnancy and you are still left alive, most of them never conceive again because of the damage that is caused. But also the mental health is affected, because you know, the way society treats abortion, it leaves women with a lot of guilt. It leaves women with a lot of shame, with a lot of stigma, you know. So what more when the service is provided in an unfriendly, also in an unsafe manner, where young people, women, lose their lives and lose the opportunity to give birth ever in their lives because of that. So it's you know, while others would argue that even the provision of that unsafe thing is required because at least a woman will still get to make a choice, my argument is that we can't opt for unsafe abortion when the country has said it is legal. It should be provided in public spaces, in public clinics, sorry. You know, why then push women to go the route of unsafe abortion when government itself has made that provision? Why are we not holding them accountable for making sure that they provide according to what they said is supposed to be there for women?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. Let's leave it there for this evening. Soul City Institute CEO Phinah Kodisang speaking to the law that has now been passed in the U.S., speaking to abortion, saying that there are some important lessons that South Africa and the continent at large can learn